Good evening, folks. This is welcome to CAN TV, Call-In TV 21. My name is Yuri Clark. I'm one of the vice presidents of the Cook County Bar Association. We will be hosting this program today, and we'll cover some topics that you might be interested in. Tonight, our topic will be the American Health Care Act. And for the purpose of tonight, we're going to call it Trump Care. That's a big topic today, big issue. Our guest tonight is an attorney, Arthur Mingo. He is an expert in the Health Care Act industry, and he's also an expert in politics. So, Mr. Mingo, why don't you introduce yourself to us?
My name is Arthur Mingo. First of all, thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
My name is Arthur Mingo. I have a bachelor's in political science, a master's in political science with a focus on Congress as an institution, and also campaign finance reform. Additionally, I received my JD from Southern Illinois University School of Law. I've just taken a real strong interest in the healthcare debate and in the legislation because the manner in which Congress is sort of grappling with healthcare, which is 1/6 of our economy, has been sort of unique, and because of that, I've really poured a lot of time, energy, and effort to seeing exactly what was going on and why things are happening the way they're happening.
Fantastic, because most of the public don't know. We don't know exactly what's going on. We hear about it on TV every day in the news, on Twitter, of course, and Facebook, but we don't have any idea what the problem is or what's facing our future. Can you give us a little bit of information about the American Health Care Act, better known as Trump Care?
Sure, not a problem. The American Health Care Act is a Republican response to the Affordable Care Act, which was passed and signed into law in around 2010. So, typically speaking, when a piece of legislation starts, you start in one chamber and then you move to the next chamber. So the American Health Care Act is the House version of essentially repealing and replacing Obamacare, also known as the Affordable Care Act. Unfortunately, right now, we do not have the Senate's answer. So the House sent over their version over to the Senate. Typically speaking, what will happen is the Senate would then start to have hearings with committees talking about what changes they want to do, what the House sent over they found acceptable, what they found that the House sent over was unacceptable. However, in this case, we have none of that. What we have is simply Republican members of the Senate saying that we are working on it. We don't know what it is. We don't know what provisions are in it. We don't know what they're going to do with Medicaid expansion. We really don't know a lot about what's going on in the Senate. And I fear the reason they're doing this is because of the backlash the House went through when they ramrodded the American Health Care Act. And so in order to save themselves the PR, they just decided to keep it all in the wraps until they're ready to actually unveil it.
So you're saying that not only does not the public know, but other members of Congress don't know, or the politicians themselves don't know what's in that act?
Yes. So Senate Republicans, with their leader, Mitch McConnell, have decided to do is to craft their response to the House bill amongst themselves. So instead of trying to have hearings, have experts come in to say what's good, what's bad, or to work with Democrats across the aisle, they simply decide to, so long as we amongst ourselves can agree on something, that is what we will vote on, and that is what will ultimately pass. This legislation, in whatever form it takes, if it finally does make it to President Trump's desk, will only make it with Republican support. Thus far, no Democrat has voted for it in the House, and every senator who has been asked about whether or not they will vote for either the American Health Care Act, which is the exact version the House sent over, or what we've sort of heard through the gossip rumors about what the Senate Republicans are going to do, every Democratic senator said they will not vote for it.
Tell me this. Today there are hearings by Jeff Sessions, other members in the past. Aren't there any public hearings about this act?
That's what would be called normal order. So normal order would be when you have hearings about what's about to happen. It is the prerogative of the majority leader, Mitch McConnell, a Republican from Kentucky, to determine whether or not there will be hearings. He has decided that there will be no hearings. None. So much so that Monday, Senator Claire McCaskill, Democrat, asked whether or not in her committee, whether or not her committee would have hearings over the American Health Care Act. Normal order requires that whenever you have a bill, that bill more than likely is going to touch different parts of the country, and different parts of the country have assigned committees. And so each committee will want to have a hearing on that bill to talk about the issues that impact what that committee is about. When she asked whether or not that they would have those hearings, the committee chair said, well, you all have been invited to our private conversations. You have chosen not to participate to that one invite. We will welcome your input when we finally unveil the finished product. At that point in time, if you're unveiling the finished product, then that means you will not have hearings, which means you will not have public input. It took over a year for the Affordable Care Act to be passed. Why? Because there were massive hearings. Republicans have decided not to do that because at the end of the day, their goal is to pass the bill, not so much to have the input.
Well, I thought a democratic society involved the public input on all types of legislation and all types of matters that might affect themselves. It doesn't happen here?
Well, yes and no. So hearings are not inherently part of that process. They are extremely helpful. However, the Senate has rules on how it conducts its business, and one of those rules is that you have to have, a bill has to be made available to the public 3 legislative days before it can be voted on. It has to have a first reading, second reading, and third reading. What I presume Leader McConnell will do is that once he is able to get all the Senate Republicans on the same page and they agree on the same language, they will then debut that bill. And then 3 to 4 days later, the entire Senate as a chamber will vote on that bill. And that 3 to 4 day period is when the public will be able to let their senator know whether they agree or disagree with that piece of with that legislation. But Leader McConnell has just made this very clear that whatever is in progress right now will not be unveiled until he is able to at least get 50 senators to all agree to the same piece of legislation.
Wow. Callers, I know there have to be some callers out there. If you were interested and want to ask a question, please call the number on the bottom of your screen. This is a very serious topic. It's going to affect every American. And to the extent that this legislation passes without public input, could have a devastating effect on our healthcare system and on our lives. So tell me this, if this legislation passed, can you tell us about how many people will be affected by this?
Well, that's a very hard question to answer, and the reason why is that we simply do not know what the Senate Republicans will do. Senators tend to have a much broader view. In most states, you have numerous House members, but you always only ever have 2 senators. Illinois, for instance, has more than 10 House members. So does New York, California, Texas, and so in those cases, those House members are only looking out for just their little district. Okay. Whereas with senators, they're looking for the whole state. You know, they typically have more conversation with the state's governor. They're more involved in the state's budget. So we know that the senators want to make sure that Medicaid, Medicare stay the way they are. But I did want to address one issue that you brought up, was about the public input. This process is not done unless the Senate decides to approve in full what the House sent over. The next step is going to be what we call a conference committee. And the conference committee is going to have the Senate bill right here, and then the House bill right here. And then leadership from both the Senate and the House will appoint some members, and then they'll bring the 2 versions together. And then they're going to negotiate to see what do I like from here and what do I like from here, and let's put them together. When that happens, the House and the Senate will have to re-vote again on that new version. So even if you are a person who's living here in Cook County or wherever you're watching, and you're thinking, well, my senator or my House member has already voted, there's nothing more I can do, after that conference committee, they're going to want to hear that input from you again. And that's going to be your chance to say, you know, I saw the original version, I didn't like the original version, I don't like the conference version. I, as your constituent, I am asking you to vote no. So there will be some chance for that input. It's just going to be really far down the line, unfortunately.
Okay, in terms of that input from the public, what how does the public do that? How do they let their politicians, the elected politicians, elected representatives know they don't like what they see? What should the public do?
The best thing I would highly recommend is to either write a letter, phone, or email both your House member as well as your two senators. If I had to say, of those three, the best way to really get their attention, and I will admit it is slightly annoying, but annoying gets results, is to call in. And do not call the district office. The district office is their office that's in your state. You want to call the DC office, because when the vote's happening, more than likely your senator or your House member is not going to be in the district or in the state. They're going to be in the DC office.
Right.
And when you call the district, what typically happens is at some point in time, the district office will let the DC office know what they're receiving. They may give the information too late. They may get the information after the vote. So the best thing to do is to call the DC office and let your senator or your House member know that way.
How do they find out that number? Can they go online? Should they call their alderman? Should they call a particular office to get that direct line number?
They can. All that information is public record, so all they will simply have to do is just Google their senator or the House member. For those who don't know who the senator or House member is, if you go to the House's website, which is house.gov, or the Senate's website, senate.gov, they make it very simple. Just type in your address, and it will tell you who is your House member, who is your senator. If you are in Illinois, we have two senators, Dick Durbin and Tammy Duckworth. Both of them are Democrats. Both of them have decided that they will not be voting for the House version, which is the American Health Care Act, or as you like to call it, Trump Care.
Right.
And they have indicated that unless the Senate does something wildly unexpected, then they're not going to vote for the Senate version of that either. If you don't live in Illinois, then I would highly recommend going to senate.gov to find out who your senator is, or house.gov to find out who your House member is.
Okay, I understand that there are some states that probably have no input because of the Senate. They don't have the necessary representation in the Senate. Is that correct?
Yes. So states that are in New England, for the most part, they have, typically speaking, all Democratic senators and all Democratic House members. And they have input in the process in that they could talk to their Democratic senator or their Democratic House member. Unfortunately, that doesn't really mean a lot because this bill will only live or die with Republican support. When we look at the vote tallies in the House for the American Health Care Act, aka Trump Care, we see that not a single Democrat voted in favor of that bill. And more importantly, if you actually watched C-SPAN when the vote was happening, they were one vote shy of the majority, and then you could see leadership, Republican leadership, going to members saying, "You told me that if I need your support, that you'll be that last vote." And so that's how they're able to get over the hurdle. So I feel for people who live in New England. Unfortunately, you're preaching to the choir. Those members are members who are predisposed not to be in favor of the American Health Care Act, Trump Care,
Right.
or whatever the Republicans come up with. And it sort of is sad.
Right. I understand that one of the most damaging provisions might be the getting rid of stopping pre-existing conditions, which, as far as I'm concerned, everyone has pre-existing conditions. Can you kind of explain to the people what are pre-existing conditions and what kind of impact if that's repealed out of there?
Sure. So, in the most broad sense possible, a pre-existing condition is anything that made you sick before you had insurance. Believe it or not, chickenpox is considered a pre-existing condition. And the reason why is that chickenpox can cause shingles.
Yes.
And so because of that, chickenpox, something that I went through as a child, something that millions of people go through, that once you have chickenpox, that can be considered a pre-existing condition. Pre-existing conditions can also include childbirth as well. So it's sort of simple things. What the American Health Care Act did was they kept in the law that an insurance company cannot say no to you if you have a pre-existing condition. However, they did remove a protection, and the protection was this. The Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare as it's also known, says that you cannot be charged more because you have a pre-existing condition. It was their way of getting everyone into the pool. Oh, I see we have
I have a caller. Great, thank you. Caller, come right and ask your question, please.
Yes, gentlemen. How you guys doing? Listen, when Obamacare went through, not one Republican voted for it. But now that they want to change it, the Republicans want to change it, and just like the gentleman said about existing symptoms and 26-year-old, and well, that's all in the new Republican bill. Why don't we wait a year and see how bad it is or how good it is? You guys don't care about if it's going to be good or bad. Obamacare is going down anyway. You got, in most of the states, you got one provider. You know that's not right. Obama says, you're going to save $2,500 a year. That's a lie. It went up $2,500 a year. You could keep your doctor, you could keep your plan. All that was a lie. So come on, guys. You give the Republicans a chance at this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that comment. Could you kind of address kind of that right now in terms of people keeping their doctors and
Sure.
keeping it sure?
Sure, not a problem. And I want to say thank you to the caller for your input. You are right. The president did oversell the. President Obama did oversell the Affordable Care Act.
But I understand that it was not necessarily just the act itself that was bad. It was that the insurance companies wanted larger profits, and that was a problem. Is that correct, too?
Oh, that's also part of it. Healthcare in the United States took a weird track compared to the rest of the developed world, in that the rest of the developed world said the federal government, or their version of a federal government, will pay for healthcare. In the UK, it's called not United Health. It's something along the lines the NHS, the National Health Service. It's essentially a single-payer system. The government will provide you the insurance you need. If you want something more, then you could buy a supplemental insurance. America, because of World War II, a lot of that health insurance was provided to our employers. So when you get a job, you get your health insurance. When you have the health insurance, you get to pick the doctor that it comes with the plan. When the president said, if you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor, the reason why I always say I was a bit of an overpromise, people took him at face value. People who have health insurance through their providers know, through their employer, know that sometimes one plan that you have this year, your employer is going to say, you know what, we're not going to go with Aetna anymore, we're going to go with Blue Cross Blue Shield.
Right.
You need to see if your doctor is still a part of Blue Cross and Blue Shield. That's what the president was really speaking towards, but he was really inarticulate at sort of explaining his position. When it comes to whether or not we should give the Republican plan a chance, I'm actually all for Republicans having a chance, but if you want that chance, then you need to be open and honest about what you're doing. Right now, we don't know what the Senate's doing. We don't know the fiscal impact of what they're going to do. We barely know what was in the House version, and that's because you had members who had access to it start to write down what they saw as soon as they got out. So it's one of those cases where if you're asking for, the presumption of let the Republicans, let them have a chance at it, then by the same token, they should be telling people exactly what they're planning on doing. And thus far, they have been very, very tight-lipped about what plans they want to share, if any.
I understand that you can't even take a cell phone into some of those meetings or take notes. Or kind of explain.
Yes. So the Republicans in the House decided that they were going to keep their version of Obamacare repeal classified. It was, as a friend of mine would say, it's G5 classified, and you're only a G2. So if you want to see what the Republicans said was, well, in the House, well, you have to be Republican to see it. So other members who are Democrats or independents, they have no access to it. You cannot bring in the cell phone or any type of recording device or any device that took a picture segment, no iPads, no Surfaces. Second of all, while you were in there, you could not take notes about what you saw. And 3, you could not photocopy what you saw, nor could you take any copies out of the room. The Senate Republicans took it a step further. Their conference only has about 52 members. Only 20 or so members of their 52-member conference are allowed in. So they're being more restricted than their housemates.
Well, we're coming to the end of the program a little bit. Tell me this. People, if the public doesn't like what they see coming out of this American Health Care Act, in 2018, you know, more elections are coming up. What should the public do?
Well, it's funny you say that. And the reason why is that to a certain extent, the Affordable Care Act and the American Health Care Act are victims of gerrymandered districts. A gerrymandered district is a district in which, for House members at least, where the member is exactly like the district. There are a lot less competitive districts. So you have Republican members of Congress who come from districts that are 55, 58, 60, 65% Republican. So those small segments of Democrats in those areas or Republicans who don't agree with it, unfortunately, they're just outnumbered. Their members come from very safe districts. However, members are like businesses. They don't like negative press and they like being reelected. So if their constituency makes it very clear, apart from the usual suspects, so if we're talking about Republicans, the usual suspects will be a Democrat. Democrats are not going to vote for Republicans. But if fellow Republicans say, you know, I don't like what you're doing, I'm going to vote for the Democrat this one time, or I'm going to vote for someone else who's Republican who will give me what I want, that may be enough to sort of turn the tide. What is very interesting about House members, and I'm sorry to cut you off
That's
there, about House members is that you could go to any House district in the Union, and 9 times out of 10, people in that House district will tell you, I love my member. My member is great. My member is perfect. There's nothing he or she does wrong. But then you'll ask that same person, what do you think about Congress? Congress is a failure. It's sad. Everyone knows that. And so you have this situation where people will continue to vote in their part of Congress over and over and over again. And the whole body as a whole doesn't really change.
Okay. What would it take for people in the community to make a change? Is it educating the public? Is it maybe more accountability action being demanded of their politicians, Congress members, senators, aldermen? What would it take to bring about change?
Well, I think the things that happened during the debate for the American Health Care Act was the right prescription if you do not like the American Health Care Act. And what happened was you had House members going out to their district and being grilled by their constituency. People who had real life stories who were explaining, this is what happened to me, this is what happened to my wife or my mother or my son or my daughter. And they said, how does that, what happened to my family, how does the American Health Care Act, how would it have treated me?
So you're telling the people to get out there and do something.
Yes, do something.
Confront the politicians. Let your ideas be known.
Yes,
Correct.
go to the meetings. When they have an open house, go to the open house. Don't read about the open house, go to the open house. The only thing better than calling the DC office is actually going to the open house meetings and letting them know face to face, if you do X, I will vote Y.
Very good. And if those politicians don't listen to you, if they still don't follow your advice, follow the public's advice,
And I would say donate money to their opposition, whether they be Democrat or Republican, volunteer, or if you really want to show them how much you didn't like what they did, think about running yourself.
excellent idea. It's too bad that too many people don't know how to do that process. If you want to vote a bum out, or if you want to change the system, people should go ahead.
Vote the bums out.
Vote the bums out.
That's a campaign slogan right there.
Right. Vote the bums out. Run for office yourselves. Teach your youth how to run for political office. Let the youth go and run and become aldermen, become senators, become congressmen. That's where the first start. So, there's local politics, move on to state, and then on to federal politics. We have only a couple of minutes now. Could you like to wrap up and tell us something?
Sure. The last thing I want to tell people is that the expected vote date on the secret Senate Republican health care plan is July 4th. And the reason why is that the hope is, at least the inside gossip, is that people won't notice what's going on because they'll be celebrating the 4th of July. The only thing I could tell people is to just always be vigilant, always keep an eye open, always watch news, and don't watch just one news source. Watch multiple news sources. That way you get a much broader view of what's going on, and that may help you understand why things are happening the way they're happening.
Very good. Thank you. And once again, this is the Cook County Bar Association. We host this show every Tuesday evening. Hopefully we'll bring in more exciting guests like Mr. Mingo here. He really kept me charged up, and hopefully he got you interested in what goes on in politics and with the new Health Care Act that's secretly being discussed in the government. Thank you all, and remember, if you need information from lawyers, the Cook County Bar Association is the largest association of African American judges and lawyers in the nation. Go on our website, cookcountybar.org. You can find referrals for lawyers from different areas of law. Hit lawyer referral. It's a drop-down menu that teaches you how to, put in your information of what you want to need some help on, and we will give you that information from our website. And also you can call our office at 312-630-1157, extension 21, and you can be referred to lawyers over the phone. So thank you so much. And Mr. Ringo, do you have anything else you want to say? Tell us about your practice. What do you do now?
Right now I work for a company, special counsel. I enjoy the work. There's one thing I want to say, which is I want to thank my friends and my family, because without them I wouldn't be here. They've helped me when I was in school with food and money, and so I really wanted to say thank you, especially to my mom, because her birthday was a few days ago.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you very much. Good night, everyone.